Again, just on the content, as I said up front for anyone who's just joining, we are active. CAA is active as a producer responsibility organization across all 5 states that have laws that have created EPR programs for paper and packaging. We are officially approved in California and Colorado, and working on our revisions to our program plan, which is a prerequisite for approval in Oregon. The focus of today is going to be Colorado and Oregon. That's not to say that there aren't updates, and there isn't a lot of work underway in states like California or Maine or Minnesota, but we have the most substantive updates to share based on where we are in the implementation and program planning process in those in Oregon and Colorado, as well as some exciting new developments on the producer services front, and a bit of a roadmap of what's to come for those in the audience who are going to have producer obligations under these laws. A few other pieces of housekeeping. We have not restricted this event in any way. This event is open to all stakeholders, including media. If media is participating, we would ask that you reserve your questions for direct outreach to CAA. Sydney will put our media email address in the chat. We monitor that several times a day, and we're really looking for this Q&A to be an opportunity for stakeholders to ask their questions. Again, recording up until Q&A. Q&A should be entered via the Q&A function, not the chat. You will not be able to come off mute or on camera, and that's just because of the volume of attendees. We get a ton of questions in these sessions. We will do our best to answer as many as possible. I will be looking through them as we go to try and group by theme so that we're getting the true FAQs answered. And just know that anything that we don't answer, we review all of the questions, and we do use that to inform presentation content, updates on our website. The content today was informed by some questions that were submitted in advance. So we're paying very close attention to all of that. I think that is it for housekeeping. I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker, who is the new Chief Executive Officer for Circular Action Alliance. Oops, legal disclaimer. Thanks for moving that along. I will let everyone read this to themselves, but essentially this states that this is not legal advice you are receiving. I am not an attorney. No one who is speaking today is speaking to you in their capacity as an attorney, so this is purely for information purposes. So next slide. I think I already overviewed the agenda, so there should be no surprises there. And I will now pass it off to Jeff Fielkow, who is our CEO, started about a little over a month ago, and I think is probably a known entity to many in this industry and many who are joining us today. And we're really thrilled to have him at the helm of this organization. And I will leave it to him to share a bit more about his background and what he's going to be bringing to the team. So thanks, Jeff, for being with us.
Olivia, thank you. Thanks for being our MC today and making this event possible. And for those that I do not know and I have not had a chance to meet, my name is Jeff Fielkow, and I am the CEO for Circular Action Alliance. And I'll share a bit more of my backstory in a bit, but I'd first like to start off by sending a big thank you for all of those that have dialed in to listen to our webinar today. We've got a variety of stakeholders who've joined, some for the first time, and others who have been with us along the journey from the very beginning. And our attendees range from brand owners to producers, manufacturers, members of the recycling supply chain, whether it's collectors, haulers, MRF operators, material end markets, NGOs, our partners at the government, or maybe just curious individuals. And Olivia, to learn more about CAA, there'll be something in the link, but just to give a very brief overview, Circular Action Alliance, or as we'll refer to it on these calls, oftentimes CAA for short. It's what's known as a producer organization, or PRO for short. And we're building CAA to support all producers, big and small, with their obligations under EPR law. And so in other words, any state that has EPR legislation for paper or packaging, like California or Colorado or Oregon, they will empower a PRO, and in this case, CAA, to coordinate all the activities on the behalf of the producers, ranging from data collection and reporting, fee setting, fee collecting, funding, managing and improving the recycling infrastructure, doing education and outreach, basically improving the old system. And that is a bit of the role that we play. So if you're a producer out there, one of your obligations is to register with a pro to ensure your compliance. And you'll hear more about that later from some of our speakers. So what can you expect from CAA? CAA's vision is crystal clear. Simply put, we want to be the leading producer responsibility organization who's advancing the circular economy through paper and packaging EPR. And we're going to get there through our mission. And that's really helping producers comply with the EPR laws, delivering harmonized, best-in-class services, working with all the stakeholder partners from the government to the NGOs to communities, all with the effort to reduce waste and recycle more. And when we talk about harmonizing producer services, what we really mean is simplifying and creating efficiencies to make it easier for the producers to comply with their experience in the reporting experience. And we know that many producers will have obligations from state to state or across state lines. And that's why CAA is a national organization offering certain compliance services that are designed to harmonize and create consistency across state lines. It also enables us to connect state organizations with each other, share tools, all with the effort of harmonizing the experience and also managing cost. So from a producer's perspective, it's making one single point of contact to do all the data and reporting across state lines. That's a benefit. A little bit about what we're doing to get ready for all the EPR due dates that are coming up. CAA is scaling very quickly with a common bond. We're building our organization and our capabilities very thoughtfully, but also very quickly with a very highly skilled and experienced team, which you'll hear from today. All of us are really united with that shared collective passion for fulfilling our vision, which I already shared. And it's that vision and our mission that really is what brought me to CAA in the first place. Along with my colleagues that you'll hear from, I too deeply want to see the circularity and the recycling system do nothing but improve. We want to help the producers solve all the problems that they have, complying and making sure that the materials that they're putting to market have a responsible end of life. We want to help businesses and residents know the options they have when they're done consuming or using products. We want to help the collectors and the recyclers get more recyclables, but also less contamination. We'd like to help municipalities be able to offer recycling services, not just for the easy materials, but for the difficult ones too. And we want to do this by working with like-minded people and partners that have the same common vision that we're so passionate about. I've spent many years, decades, I will say, in different points of the packaging and recycling value chain, from building, designing, operating, owning MRFs, recycling centers, both commercial and residential, at one point servicing nearly 30% of all the US households. I've also worked on developing end markets for products that didn't have robust markets. I've also sat in the hat of being on the manufacturer or converting side as a 3-time CEO. And I've worked closely with governments, both in the US and overseas, establishing effective PROs and what we would call voluntary producer organizations, both in Asia and North America. And what I've seen over the past couple decades is the potential for EPR to fundamentally shift and improve how public and private partnerships can work together to actually have a meaningful impact and make infrastructure better for recycling. And that opportunity to make sure that we get EPR right here in the US is what really drove me to this opportunity. And I'm committed to put all of my years of experience in this space to ensure that we get it right for the stakeholders and we make a meaningful difference at the end of the day. But when you look at that, it's not what one company can do. This is very much a shared stakeholder engagement project. Firsthand, from experiences I've seen, it's knowing that we need to solve all of the challenges that stakeholders have when looking at various EPR systems. I understand the financial and the operational pressures that producers are under when they're trying to adapt to new legislative and new regulations. I know firsthand the technical hurdles that recyclers have when trying to adapt systems to increase commodities into their space. And I also recognize the confusion and the frustration that businesses or residents might have when they're trying to determine what is recyclable from city to city or state to state. And so the way to solve that is through deep levels of collaboration. It's a must. And it really is at the heart of everything we do at CAA. We're building a determined and dedicated and capable team that has deep experience in how EPR can be effectively rolled out, and also has a good understanding of how recycling happens at the state level. But no one single entity can do this alone. And so our success really is making sure we have formed deep level partnerships across the value chain to ensure that we have open dialogue, that we're looking for innovation, new ways to collect and recycle, new ways to approach problems. And it's that perspective we'll get from all shareholders that will enable us to build the program that will be better than the best. And I'm not alone when I talk about those that have the shared passion inside of our company. When it comes to that shared passion and skills, we've got several dedicated speakers that you're going to listen to today, amazing at what they do. You'll hear from Jeffrey, Yuri, and Kim in a few minutes. All of them are driven by the same mission. That's our unifying bond. And we'll start getting our updates from our presentations from Kim Holmes, who Olivia had mentioned earlier. Kim was named as CAA's Executive Director to Oregon this summer, and she's hit the ground running. In fact, she's in the midst of developing her second round of the program plans so we can be ready for the start date in July of 2025 when the Oregon program starts. So Kim, I'll turn it over to you, and welcome.
Great. Thank you for that, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here with this audience and to be able to offer an update on where our efforts stand here in Oregon. Next slide. But before we do that, I think I'll take the opportunity to provide a little bit of background on myself as well. So I am based here in Oregon, and I've got 22 years of experience in the recycling industry. And really, my career has been focused entirely on working with industry to make sure that we are improving recycling outcomes, developing new innovative end markets for recyclable materials, and helping companies ensure compliance to the changing regulatory landscape when it comes to recycling goals, targets, use of recycled content. And prior to assuming this role, I did have the pleasure of working with CAA as a consultant for about a year, helping to prepare for our first program plan submission. So quite familiar with all of the activities here in Oregon as I stepped into this role. So let's talk about where we're at in terms of our effort. We are hitting a very significant milestone this week, as Jeff mentioned, with the submission of our second program plan. So if you look at the timeline, really our efforts formally kicked off here in Oregon while we've been engaging on the rulemaking process and preparing for the program plan, really formally, our presence really formalized our presence here with the submission of the first program plan, March 31st. That went through a review period, both with the public comment period and the review of the Recycling Council and feedback from DEQ. We are breaking up our next program plan submission into two. Our second program plan submission is going to be submitted this week, and then we'll be working to finalize the final pieces, and we'll talk about what that will include December of this year. That will put us in place to have approval of the program, hopefully early in 2025. Then we will have producer reporting open with the goal of having producer registration and reporting completed by March 31st. And really that's going to be the final piece of information needed to allow us to produce the final fee schedule for producers in June. And that leads us to the kickoff of the program in July. And we'll talk about what happens on July 1 and what things look like then through the course of the first program plan, which will take us through the end of 2028. Okay, next slide, please. has advanced for you all. So there it is. What happens July 1, 2025? And so we're really encouraging it. Is working very closely with DEQ. What's really important to impart is that let's look at the RMA as kind of turning the dial. It's not a switch, right? Communities take time to adapt to new programs, adopt, new collection systems. And so what we'll be doing is, CAA will begin to finance the changes that will be seen, that will help support the change throughout the system of the entire first program plan. So July 1, producers begin to pay fees to CAA based on their reported volumes. Communities then become eligible for contamination reduction funding. And that's really going to be a big initial focus in terms of education and communication. Not every community is going to be ready to make the transition to collecting the full range of materials on the Uniform Statewide Collection List. But whatever community can be prepared to do is start to ensure that residents and business customers are recycling right, that we're driving contamination out of the system. And CAA will be providing funding to support that education. Money will begin to flow to the permitted recycling facilities. Here in Oregon, we have our own set of acronyms. So these recycling facilities that are traditionally material recovery facilities are known as commingled recycle processing facilities, or CRPFs. And these facilities will become eligible to receive the processor commodity risk fee and contamination management fees. These two fees that they'll receive from CAA are really important because this will be the enabler for them to invest in new technologies that will improve their sortation capabilities and further reduce contamination that will flow through the recycling system. Oregon also has a unique requirement that communities transporting commingled recyclables over 50 miles will be eligible for transportation reimbursement. This is really kind of the great equalizer in terms of the rural and urban communities and having access to recycling. Further, the first priority communities to receive funding will be those communities that don't currently have recycling. And many of those communities, again, are our rural communities. So we have a chance to close the performance gap. And so money begins to flow through the system to improve and modernize the system and enable this transition that will occur over the next 2 years at the local level. Next slide, please. So one of our major research pieces that we've undertaken to inform the program plan is coming to a conclusion. And this is really a first of its kind research project here in Oregon called the Oregon System Optimization Project. And so focused and worked with local governments and their service providers to better understand where system investments were needed to help close that performance gap in recycling services. This work also will greatly help us refine our cost estimates and ensure the accuracy of the cost estimate, which will be reflected in the December program plan. And if any of you were familiar with the 2023 needs assessment that DEQ conducted, this is really a follow-on to that to better understand what local governments and their service providers will need. So we had 191 local jurisdictions responding, and then further took that into consultation at the wayshed level and were able to accomplish 35 of those. Now you notice that there's a bit of a decline in the number of jurisdictions participating, and that's in large part because once they understood the scope of the Uniform Statewide Collection List and what they would be asked to collect, many of the local governments that first participated in the 2023 needs assessment realized that they were well situated to make that transition and didn't need any additional investment. So it is encouraging that the results will help us, I think, further drive down some of the cost projections that were in the first program plan. Next slide, please. So let's talk about specifically what you will be seeing updated in both the second program plan submission that will likely be made public next week, and then that third program plan submission in December. Next slide. All right, so in this upcoming program plan submission, you will basically see all of the sections updated that do not relate to the cost estimates coming out of that ORSOP survey, since that doesn't conclude with final data delivered until mid-October. So what we were able to address is we've updated the administration section, particularly around the organization as we've grown. You'll see our material strategy. There you'll see detail or our stated intention to on-ramp a number of new materials, and also what our approach will be to handling those specially identified materials by DEQ or the SIMS. We've updated our financing section and our equity section. Equity is a big focus in the Oregon plan. We've updated our education and outreach section, which did receive conditional approval from the first program plan. So we hope to have final approval of the education and outreach section with that. And we already have substantial work underway to deliver the tools and resources to local governments there. And you'll see updates to management and compliance, certification and attestation, and responsible end markets. So the responsible end market requirement is one that extends not just to Oregon, but to California and Colorado as well. We are hoping to develop a verification protocol that would meet the needs of all of the states. And so you will see the initial proposed criteria for that verification protocol in that responsible end market update. So if you're curious about that, please go ahead and review that section of this program plan. In December, what you'll see are updates really that need the final inputs from the ORSOP survey. So you'll see our collection and recycling, system expansion investments in there. And then also our Pro Depot network will be updated in there as well. So, and all of the management of the pro materials. And then finally that updated fee schedule, which will have a more detailed fee schedule for all 60 product categories, which our producers will be asked to report to here in Oregon. Next slide. All right, so just a little bit about Oregon's fee setting and the three main data points that are really needed for us to accurately calculate those producer fees. So system costs. We need to understand what it will take to manage the anticipated volumes in the system. And that's the work that we currently have underway now and what will ultimately be reflected in the program plan. We need to better understand the number of registered producers. CAA has registered about 1,400 producers already that have identified being an obligated producer in Oregon. CAA continues to reach out to producers. If you haven't yet registered, I would encourage you to do so. You will get access to lots of really good information to prepare you for the reporting process. And then lastly, we need that supply data. And that's what we have the deadline of March 31st for producers to report to us. We need to understand the total amounts of covered products that producers sell into Oregon and the total amount of material that will be in each reported category. And those two things together, we factor costs across these supplies to get the final fee schedule. And so we have been hearing questions from producers. Can CAA offer some of these initial estimates for planning purposes? And we do recognize that producer budgeting process for many of you does start in September for forecasting obligations in the next year. So in that September plan, you will see interim base fee estimates for 16 product categories based on 3 different supply reporting scenarios. And so we hope that will give producers a good starting point for their cost estimates. And then, as I mentioned, you'll have even more refined estimates in that December plan. And my last slide here is just a real quick example of how you will see some of these new fee estimates displayed. And you'll see, as I mentioned, so each for each product category, you've got these 3 different pricing scenarios, which again reflect 3 different scenarios of supply being reported. So, I think the important thing to impart here is that accurate reporting is really important. And the more accurate reporting we get for those volumes and more complete reporting, you start to see some of the lower cost estimates there when you do get full system and supply reporting from producers. So we do encourage you to engage early and prepare for reporting so we can get that done in a very complete fashion. And as I said, you will have more accurate fees in December, and we will continue to update the producer community as we have new information available. But you can expect to have that final fee schedule in June. And we look forward to your continuing engagement as we move closer to implementation July 1. And I think that wraps things up for me. Thank you. I would like to go ahead and turn things over to my counterpart, over in Colorado, Yuri Freeman. Yuri?
Kim, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to speak with y'all and tell you about CAA here in Colorado. Similar to what Jeff and Kim did, I want to take a quick moment to share a little background about myself before I get into the Colorado updates. I'm just over 3 months into the position of Executive Director for CAA here in Colorado, so I'm assuming there's many of you who I have not yet met. So I moved to Colorado in the late 90s. My family and I now reside outside of Boulder, Colorado, about 10 miles north. My background is as a resource economist, and I've been in the recycling industry for nearly 20 years. This includes time in both the public and private sector. Prior to joining CAA, I was managing principal for RRS Resource Recycling Systems. And before that, I managed the recycling program for the city and county of Denver, which at the time and continues to still be the largest recycling program in the state of Colorado. For the past 2 decades, I've been collaborating closely with cities, counties, the state regulator at CDPHE here in Colorado, private sector, and other folks around the state to increase recycling in Colorado. Now with EPR, we have not only the opportunity, but in fact the mandate to more than double Colorado's recycling rate. And I cannot be more excited for this wonderful opportunity to make a change in the state I've loved and lived in for nearly 30 years now. Also excited for the opportunity to work with all of you to create the circular economy for printed paper and packaging here in my home state. Next slide, please. I'm going to give a couple of quick updates. Similar to Kim, I want to start with the program timeline, and this does look kind of similar to Kim's. So I'll talk about a few of the upcoming milestones without getting into all of the weeds on it. So the first one on this list is registration deadline for Colorado for producers in Colorado is October 1st, 10/1, which is fast approaching, just over a week, actually just a week away. After I present, one of my colleagues, the Senior Vice President for Producer Services, Jeffrey Inch, is going to talk about more how you could register if you aren't registered. We'll also share a QR code that'll take you directly to that registration page, which is pretty easy to fill out. The next milestone on here is our draft program plan is due in February 1st. So the Colorado team, we are 100% focused on developing this program plan right now. I'm going to talk more about the program plan and our progress toward this submission in the next couple of slides. Once the plan is submitted, the state EPR advisory board and the state regulator CDPHE have 315 days, which is laid out in the state law, to collect feedback, review, request edits, and approve the plan, which pushes us toward December for the actual plan approval. Some other key milestones within here. July 1st, according to the state law, producers are no longer allowed to sell products in Colorado if they are not participating in the EPR program. Producers will be asked to report data on August 1st of next year for the first 6 months of 2025. So similar to what Kim was talking about, we'll be taking those first 6 months of data that are reported in August and then quickly turning around to publish the dues or fees for the following year for 2026. So we do need to supply tons to be able to figure out what the final dues will be. The draft of those dues will be in the plan submitted in February, but once again, we'll need that data before we can announce the final dues. So producers report data in August. We publish the final dues for 2026 on October 30th of next year. And then the big date on here is 2026. The plan will be approved by late December, mid-December. Producers begin paying dues. The pro is to begin implementation within 6 months of plan approval. And then the CDPHE, that's the state regulator, they will be publishing their eco-modulation bonus schedule in January of 2026. Next slide, please. So a couple of quick updates on the program plan development and where we're at. So some of you, I'm assuming, participated in a few of these consultation meetings. We just wrapped up about a 7-week push to do 10 formal consultations. All of these were virtual. We had nearly 2,100 attendees collectively across these 10 sessions, from environmental NGOs, collectors, processors, producers, state regulators, local governments, all types of different folks attended these. We are continuing to gather feedback. So if you'd like to share your input, pardon me, on any of the consultations, you can scan this QR code on the slide. That'll take you right to where the consultation documentation is being shared. So you can download the slide decks, get the notes, and then there's surveys so you can share your input that way. In addition to the consultation process, I'll talk about this on the next slide too. We are also doing Colorado EPR advisory board meetings every other week. So there's one of these every 2 weeks. We just passed the 30 meeting milestone last week. So collectively across these meetings, these are all public meetings. They're driven by CDPHE, but CAA does a lot of the presenting. We're over 100 hours of public consultation through these meetings, and we encourage you to attend those too. If you want to talk about any of the consultation topics on this slide in more detail, more depth, a lot of it happens in these every other week meetings. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, and I'll pass it off to you, Jeff, next. So where are we at on the program plan development? We did wrap the formal consultation process. That doesn't mean we're done soliciting input and getting feedback. So we just wrapped the 10 meetings. We're compiling, analyzing all the feedback we've received to date, and we're continuing to collect feedback for another 3.5 weeks or so. All of that feedback will be published in the draft program plan. So we'll share all the feedback and how we're responding to it. We are working not just in the US, but globally to find experts where we need them. So it's not easy to develop this program plan for something novel in the state of Colorado. It's never been done before. Luckily, there's experts around the globe that have done EPR, and we're bringing them in where needed to help us fill the gaps and help us draft the plan. We continue to work with CDPHE, that's our state regulator, to answer their questions, and it's also been a two-way street. CDPHE has been great. They're answering our questions too. We have a very collaborative relationship with the state. We're working hand in hand to figure out how to implement EPR here in the state. We are continuing external engagement. While the formal consultation is over, it doesn't mean we aren't soliciting input and working with different stakeholders. This photo is from last Friday, where myself and some of our Colorado colleagues presented to about 80 people to solicit feedback on how are we going to implement EPR in rural parts of Colorado? How are we going to work in our open markets? And what's the best way to do our education outreach programs? So we do continue to do these informal meetings. If you want to meet with us here in Colorado, please reach out. The more collaborative we can be, the more input we can get, the better for us to develop this strong program plan. And then lastly, we do continue to leverage those advisory board meetings. Those are the every other week meetings with the state of Colorado to share information and gather feedback. So once again, if you do want to attend those meetings, I encourage you to please register. Next slide, please. As that's up, there it is. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to pass it off to the SVP of Producer Services, Mr. Jeffrey Inch.
Well, thank you, Jeff, Kim, and Yuri. Glad to be here. This is really exciting because, as Olivia mentioned, a lot of new faces, but really the team is coming together and we're having a wonderful time getting rolling on a number of these aspects. As you can see, all the wonderful activity going on in the states. I'm going to talk a little bit about producer services, but let me first also just do a quick introduction. I'm really excited to be a part of the Circular Action Alliance. I've spent over a decade in materials, and specifically within that, really thinking through in the plastics industry how we can increase circularity through a number of different approaches, including policy development, infrastructure investment, and also working with a lot of our producers at CAA and how they can incorporate more sustainable, recycled, and bio-based materials into their packaging and products. So I have a lot of experience in that space, the challenges that our producers are going to be facing as they continue to operate in this evolving environment. But really, as Jeff mentioned too, the team and myself particularly, very motivated by this opportunity, this chance to really revolutionize the market that we've all been working towards changing over many years. And this is a wonderful opportunity with CAA to move things forward. So I want to maybe kind of frame for you a little bit how producer services is working with the state programs, and then talk a little bit about what we're developing to help producers as they move through their compliance journey with CAA over the next several months and years. So maybe let's go to the next slide and we can start there. And I only have one slide, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time here, and then we'll be able to take some questions, which can address anything that maybe we've missed. But let me just set the stage a bit. So one of the really important value propositions for CAA is not only to be able to deliver on the compliance requirements in each of the state programs, but also to really think about how do we make the process of compliance for national producers and people that may have obligations in several states as simple and as efficient as possible. And we're looking to do that through a development roadmap that is going to provide the tools, the systems, and the resources, and very clear understanding of the actions that producers need to take in order to deliver compliance overall. So I think one of the important moments we're at with CAA right now is that over the last year, CAA has done a wonderful job recruiting and bringing producers into CAA's world through an initial registration step. And that has been a tool to give people access to information sessions and to learn about their requirements. But we're beginning now with the reporting deadlines that you just saw and the program startup deadlines that are coming very shortly after. We're beginning to pivot into real compliance actions that are going to be required for all producers to take in order to remain compliant through this process and to work together with CAA for us to deliver on our commitments. So what we've established is a very clear, what we believe is a clear compliance framework here and a roadmap of tools that we're developing. I'm going to walk through that a bit. But at the core, we want to create a very simple, harmonized process that is going to allow producers to appropriately register, which many people who are on this call have likely done if you're an obligated producer. But the next steps in that process are to sign what is called a participant producer agreement. You may see that that's in some of the Q&A. We've talked about that in some of the answers to the questions already. That will be the next step for producers. It will be the base terms and conditions with which producers begin to participate with CAA. It is going to be kind of like a master services agreement. It's not going to obligate you to a specific state program because we are still working on finalizing some of the rulemaking and regulations in the state. As those are concluded, we will build on state addenda that will support the PPA and be an exhibit to the PPA that will actually obligate producers to the states that they choose to work with CAA for their compliance needs. So in total, Register has a bit of a broader scope as we move through the process. And in the fall and into early next year, we're going to see these additional documents that producers will be able to assign and more deeply engage with CAA. Then we're going to move to reporting. You've heard about reporting at the state level in this presentation already. What we're doing to deliver a harmonized experience for producers is to develop a producer portal that is going to be a one-stop shop for not only reporting guidance that will be launched later this fall, but also a number of tools such as aggregating your invoices, as well as the reporting modules themselves, which are going to be where you submit all of your material supply data to CAA. Now, we may have some questions. I'll preempt one or two that I've seen. Reporting is going to be at the state level initially, but we are working to do national harmonization of that, and we're going to talk more about that. But the module itself, the way you enter and interact with CAA will be one set of credentials for your company, which will help to make it simpler in terms of experience. Now, when it comes to fees, you've already seen from Kim, as we have some fee schedules in our Oregon plan, program plan 2 that we'll be submitting, that will allow for budgeting, but ultimately that portal is also going to be where you can pay all your invoices for fees and dues to CAA. So that'll be a very simple place to go do that. And then we're also going to have tools for some of the more innovative redesign opportunities as programs mature. And just to kind of ground all that, I've mentioned a few of these tools, but we do have a lot of resources to support producers through the producer services journey. And that for non-registered producers, or if you're thinking about registration, or if you are like maybe today you're not an obligated producer, but you're interested in CAA, there's a number of things that you can do. You can join these multi-stakeholder sessions. If you believe you might be a potential producer, we have onboarding sessions where you can learn more about EPR and understand a bit more about registration. We do have a producer resource center on our website, which has a lot of information and is continually updated. There will actually be an update within the coming week that will have more information on covered materials and producer definition that will inform and hopefully help people register ahead of the deadline that I'm going to mention in a second. And we are also establishing, even more in-depth producer support tools where you can reach us and ask questions. Now, as you become registered, we talked about the portal. That's going to be the one-stop shop for producers and all their compliance aspects with CAA. Guidance is going to continue to be developed into the fall and will be refined as we get more information from regulators through the beginning of 2025 and throughout the remainder of that year. And then I'll just point out as I close here that there are information sessions and education resources that are going to be exclusive to registered producers. So as you get registered, you'll have a chance to get access to all of those tools, and we'll really be able to get some of your questions asked in more intimate sessions where we're able to talk in a bit more technical detail on some of the work that we're developing in our program plans and our producer services processes. So really to close out, and I think what we have after this is a chance to go to Q&A. I may not be the last to mention this, but you've probably seen this all over our website and some of our social media channels. We do just want to take a moment to remind everybody there is an October 1st deadline in Colorado for registration. So if you do believe you are a potential producer, I would encourage you to register. It's not an obligating step in the process, and you can always amend that as more information comes out on producer definition. But we just really encourage you to register with CAA. It's a simple form. As Yuri mentioned, we have a QR code in the presentation here. You can also go to our website and navigate to that quite easily. So thank you so much for the opportunity and look forward to a little bit of Q&A. I believe I'm going to pass it back to Olivia to host that.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of our presenters. That was a lot of content in a short period of time. And so I'm going to just briefly say, because we had a few questions in the chat, probably from folks who didn't make it right at the beginning of the presentation, but this presentation has been recorded up until this point. We will be stopping recording now for questions. And we will share both the recording and all of the slides with those who registered to attend. And we will also be posting them on our website.